All right, welcome to Money Talks. Happy Friday, happy Memorial Day weekend to those of you in the US. I'm your host, Bill Barhydt, founder at Abra. Today, we've got Ric Edelman, who's going to join us to give his perspective on what's happening in the markets, his thoughts on crypto, and how it impacts his personal investment style. Ric was named the #1 financial advisor by Barron, and he's been inducted into the Financial Advisors Hall of Fame. Natalie Brunell will give us her weekly report, including an in-depth look at what's going on with Bitcoin, of course, and JP Morgan's new and ever-evolving stance on crypto. Then, of course, we've got Team Abra here to answer your questions in our AAA Ask Abra Anything. All right, let's do this. All right, gang. A lot to talk about today, as always. Unfortunately, it's still not the best of times in the broader financial markets. Clearly, we are in a bear market, not only for crypto but for equities, and looks like we're starting to see a recovery in the bond markets, which we'll get into with Ric when he joins us in a few minutes. So, as I mentioned earlier, Natalie's going to give us her latest thoughts on what's happening with Bitcoin. I'm really excited to bring you Ric Edelman in a few minutes. Let's just take a quick look here. It's ugly, right? So there's no two ways to or no happy way to sugarcoat this. The markets are ugly. The crypto charts are even uglier. We've been through this before, if there's any consolation, right? So let me quickly just bring up my chart here. So I'll start with Ethereum. Ethereum is having another horrible week. I have never seen this before, so no one has actually. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down weeks in a row for Ethereum. Now at 1764. Way oversold by any historical measure. Bitcoin also, looking at its 9th down week in a row, again, way oversold by any historical measure. Now more than 2 standard deviations below its historical trading average. Ethereum as well. Historically, that has been the point at which we tend to see a sharp recovery. The problem, of course, is that at least for now, crypto markets are completely correlated to equities. I saw a report with Cathie Wood last week where she correctly pointed out that this is historically not the case. And basically, this correlation started as we were getting into COVID and has become extreme at this particular point. And so I suppose until we see a recovery in equities, we may not see the recovery that we historically would have gotten on this bounce here. So I'll have more to say about this in the AAA later, and we'll certainly get into this with Ric when he joins us in a few minutes. So enough of that. In the meantime, a lot of interesting news in the crypto world. Let's see. So beyond just the price action, a lot of news coming out of the Ethereum world. Right, while we get ready for the potential August merge, which would make proof of stake the default consensus mechanism for Ethereum, it looks like there was a reorg, which went several blocks deep into the Ethereum proof of stake chain, known as Beacon. It's pretty complicated what this all means, but effectively, there was some inconsistencies amongst the validators, and it resulted in a multi-block reorganization of the chain. Galaxy had an interesting perspective on this in their weekly newsletter last week, and so I'll point you to their website to get the details. But as I said, it's complicated. I think that they figured out an attack vector from earlier this year, which has been addressed. And I'm still extremely bullish on Ethereum, but this was a very interesting update. Maybe you saw Seth Green's, I don't know if it's accurate to say that his Bored Ape was stolen or he was a victim of a phishing attack. It's still relatively unclear, but Anyway, the NFT that was stolen from him caused a whole ruckus in crypto Twitter land. I don't really follow him very much, but obviously the fact that I even knew about it, given that I'm not up to speed on a lot of the things happening in pop culture, is interesting. I don't know if you heard about this app, Step N Fitness. It's an app on Solana, excuse me, that's netting 3 million a day in profits. Let me say that again, 3 million a day, right? So I don't know exactly. I haven't tried it yet, but I know that in addition to generating more than 3 million a day in net trading fees, they've generated, I think, upwards of $100 million in in-app marketplace fees as well. And it's pretty cool. Basically, signing up uses this referral system that requires you to get a referral code, which has caused it to have a little bit of a viral impact on its growth. And it basically uses this idea of these NFT sneakers and a two fungible token system. And anyway, the in-game economy looks pretty interesting. I'm going to do a deep dive on it in the coming days. So check out Step N. Let me know what you think. I think it's pretty interesting. As we get deeper and deeper into the DApp world at Abra, NFTs and other things, I think gaming and the use of the wallet for gaming is going to become a very interesting part of our future. Okay, so interesting goings on there. I have a bunch of news on Bitcoin, but I'm going to save that for Natalie because I know she's got a much deeper dive on that. So we'll let her give us all things Bitcoin news coming up in just a minute. As I said, we've got Ric Edelman here to share his insights and thoughts on the broader markets, investing in down cycles, which he's seen many of, and of course, his latest on crypto. But before we get to that, getting into crypto should not be difficult. At Abra, we've made it easy as possible with several different ways to add funds to your Abra account. It's safe, easy, secure. Here's how it works.
Funding your Abra account is easy. Just open the app, then tap Add Money. To buy with your Visa or MasterCard, tap the app. Click Bitcoin through Simplex. Open in your web browser. Enter the amount, then paste your Abra wallet address and tap Continue. To transfer money from your bank account, tap on ACH Transfer, add a new bank account, Continue. Then select your bank. Enter your username and password. Confirm your identity with a code. Select account, enter an amount, and confirm. For a wire transfer, tap Bank Wire Transfer. Then tap Wire Instructions. Log on to your bank's online banking page, then initiate a wire transfer. Follow the instructions on the Abra app to input your account, then send your wire. Transferring crypto is simple. Tap Deposit Cryptocurrency, then select the coin you're transferring. The Abra app gives you the receive address to send your funds to. Funding is easy with Abra.
All right, welcome back. Abra Bitcoin Analyst Natalie Brunell is here, and she's got a detailed look into what's going on with Bitcoin, as well as some big crypto news. Hey, Natalie.
Hi, Bill. Well, I'm actually reporting in from Europe where I just attended the Oslo Freedom Forum. If people haven't heard of it, I really urge you to check it out. It's not a Bitcoin conference per se, but there's actually a huge Bitcoin component to it. The Human Rights Foundation puts on this conference every single year and brings about human rights activists and dissidents from different countries and people just working in the space who want to shine light on the stories around the world of people subverting oppressive governments, escaping, finding economic opportunity and freedom. And of course, Bitcoin has been helping that. So you might know Bitcoiner Alex Gladstein, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for the Human Rights Foundation. He's been bringing in Bitcoiners from around the world to tell their stories and talk about how Bitcoin is changing lives in places like Africa and Afghanistan and North Korea. And so I got to hear from some amazing speakers. Many of them you guys know and recognize: Elizabeth Stark, Jack Mallers, Jeff Booth, Fode Diop, so many, Lynn Alden, so many great names in the space who all came and they served on panels and moderated discussions and talked about, again, how Bitcoin is really helping people in real time. And the use case for Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is so powerful in developing nations and different countries that are under oppressive regimes. Whereas, here we talk a lot about it as a savings technology. So I urge people to check out the Oslo Freedom Forum. There are some great videos of the panels online, and it was truly an amazing event. I'm super grateful that I got to go and record some of my podcasts there. But all right, for headlines that I'm watching, Of course, if you have been watching Bitcoin's price, Bitcoin is back under $30,000. It finishes a record 8 weeks in the red. Unfortunately, Bitcoin has lost about 35% of its value since March. And as we talked about before, people are expecting it could go even lower because the Fed is continuing to tighten. So the Fed is scheduled to do quantitative tightening, officially begin that in June, and shrink the Fed's balance sheet. But many analysts say that they might not be able to do that because the economy is showing signs of rolling over, and that could prompt a pivot. I saw a great tweet that I think encapsulates what's happening right now. It said something like, the bullish case for stocks is that if the economy sucks bad enough, the Fed won't be as aggressive with rate hikes. And I think that's pretty much true. And if the Fed does pivot, that could be very, very bullish for Bitcoin. JP Morgan, if you saw it in the news, is definitely bullish on Bitcoin. The bank said in a note Wednesday that they see a 28% surge in the price of Bitcoin over this year, which would only bring it back to about 38,000, a number we've seen before. We thought that was a support position not too long ago. And the bank also said that Bitcoin is now among its preferred alternative investments. So wow, what a turnaround among another institution. And I think as more regulatory clarity comes to the space, more of these companies, more of these big banks could be adding Bitcoin to maybe their balance sheet. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds, depending, of course, on regulation and the greater macroeconomic outlook. And I do want to point out that Bitcoin Magazine just did a really interesting piece this week about how oil and gas companies are moving into the Bitcoin mining space at an aggressive pace. We've had announcements already from ExxonMobil, which, by the way, has an annual revenue of about $285 billion, as well as ConocoPhillips, Giga Energy, Marathon Oil, EOG Resources, to Texas Pacific Land. You might not have heard of all these companies, but they are all either officially or rumored to be getting into mining. They might be selling gas to miners. They might be helping them capture stranded energy or mining Bitcoin themselves. So I think this is incredibly bullish as well for the space, as this is a pretty much tightened industry that could help legitimize Bitcoin as an investment. It will help reinforce power grid operations. And again, Bitcoin miners go where energy is cheapest. And a lot of that happens to be renewable energy. And so it's driving capital in that green direction as well. That's about it for Bitcoin this week. Hopefully we will see some green candles next week. And until then, I hope everyone enjoys their holiday weekend. See you later.
All right. Thanks, Natalie. That was awesome. I definitely want to get into this JP Morgan thing with you, and we're going to get into it with Ric as well. But stick around. We've got Ric Edelman up next. He's literally a Hall of Fame financial advisor, and you won't want to miss this. We're going to do our Ask Abra Anything after that, where we'll get into all your burning CPRX questions, of course, which seems to be what's on everybody's mind. But first, Abra is the all-in-one super simple app that lets you trade, earn, and borrow crypto. Take a look at how easy it is to make trades.
Trading on Abra is easy. Just click the exchange button. Tap the source you'd like to trade. Tap on what you'd like to trade it for. Type in the amount. Then click trade. Tap, type, trade. Totally easy on Abra.
All right, welcome back, gang. So please welcome Ric Edelman to Money Talks. Ric is a best-selling author, the co-founder of Edelman Financial Services. He's been named the #1 financial advisor in the U.S. by Barron's. He's been inducted into the Financial Advisor Hall of Fame. Ric and his wife founded the Edelman Nursing Career Development Center in partnership with, I think it's called Innova, I was reading earlier. And of course, anyway, the list goes on and on. I was actually looking at some of your books earlier. I saw some books on kind of teaching kids about money and the basics of money. And so if you just do a search for Ric Edelman on Amazon, the list goes on and on and on. Well, welcome to Money Talks, Ric.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you. And of course, my newest book, The Truth About Crypto, just came out 2 weeks ago.
Saw that as well, and I want to talk about that. But let me ask you first. You've seen a lot of cycles, right? What does this cycle, or what does the market that we're in kind of look most like to you historically?
Well, as you noted, there are a couple of items that are familiar, but also brand new. In the familiar category, this is the 7th time in Bitcoin's history that it has fallen more than 50% in value. So, we've seen this movie before. On the other hand, we haven't seen correlation the way that we have in the past 9 months. Bitcoin has always been a non-correlated asset or a negatively correlated asset. And that was one of the points of pride for folks in the Bitcoin community, saying that it's a wonderful addition to a diversified portfolio because it zigs when the others zag. That hasn't been true since last fall. And it has people worried as to whether or not that thesis still holds water and whether or not this weakens the argument for investing in Bitcoin. I think it's too early to tell. I think the jury is still out on that one. But clearly, part of the reason, perhaps the dominant reason for the correlation that we've been experiencing is because of the new institutional engagement. For the first 12 years of Bitcoin's life, there was all individual investors and initially, a bunch of outcast investors, anarchists who were trying to bring down the global financial system with this newfound digital money. And they were not at all engaged in the financial markets. Well, now we have some of the biggest investment entities engaging, endowments, pension funds, hedge funds, billionaires, major insurance companies. I mean, everybody everywhere seems to be starting to pay attention to this. And so last year, we saw even more trading by institutional investors in Bitcoin than we did retail investors.
Yep.
And so when the sell-off began on the stock market last fall, those institutional investors reallocating their portfolios and selling stocks, they're selling Bitcoin like they're selling NASDAQ. Their attitude is, we're selling everything everywhere all the time. And so Bitcoin got caught up in that, and it's therefore not got the non-correlation game anymore. Mm-hmm. Will that persist? Or will the institutional investors finally get the memo reminding them that Bitcoin's a non-correlated asset, that it has nothing to do with the stock, bond, or real estate markets, and that they need to start treating it differently? Time will tell. We'll wait and see. But in the meantime, most are considering this just part of the ongoing trend of what's happening in the global financial marketplace as we fight our way out of COVID and dealing with the war in Ukraine.
Yep. So when you think about just the broader markets, right? Like you look at the stock market in general and what's happening with interest rates and how, labor force participation and the MSI numbers basically are saying we're headed towards recession. In your opinion, are we in a recession? Yeah. Does this look like the 70s for you? Are we headed towards prolonged stagflation? And is that going to be a drag on broader assets for a long time?
I think so. I think yes to all the above. We're in a recession. We are. This is not 1982, it's 1972 in terms of a metaphor or analogy. Most folks are unaware and unprepared for the scenario that we're in today because the 70s was so long ago. It was over 50 years ago. And most folks don't have a personal experience of the investment marketplace 50 years. Their personal experience is anywhere from 1 year to 40 years. I mean, I can occasionally find people like me who got into the financial markets in the 80s, but I'm now 64. And so there aren't too many people who have 40 years of investment experience. So if you have less, if you've got 5, 10, 20, 30 years of experience, that means your experience is the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and teens. All good. We've seen 40 years of declining interest rates, nothing other than that. We've seen 40 years of an incredibly booming stock market and real estate market, nothing other than that. Oh, there have been pockets here and there, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 credit crisis, the pandemic, but those were short-lived experiences. The crash of 87, those didn't last long. They weren't long-term sustainable trends. What we're now experiencing is a generational shift. Just like we had transitioning from the 60s and 70s into the 80s and 90s, where we had interest rates that are now, for the first time, coming down. For 40 years, interest rates have been steadily going down, which means for 40 years, bond prices have been steadily going up to the point where people think that's all that bonds ever do. Right, Anybody who's ever invested in a bond fund or a bond only thinks bonds rise in value. They don't understand the interest rate risk that they're suffering. Well, now with interest rates rising for the first time in their collective experience, they're now seeing the worst bond market since 1842. And most people don't realize the calamity of this. They don't realize that this is not a short-term thing. This is a long-term trend. We're not going to see interest rates returning to 0 point nothing like they were over the past decade. We're going to see continuing increases in interest rates over the next several months, certainly the rest of this year, possibly, probably well into next year, Q1 at least, as the government tries to rein in inflation and rejigger the economy to get it moving again. So in the meantime, we can fully expect stagflation, as you described it, the stock market languishing, the bond market languishing, and we haven't even begun yet to see the real estate market languish, which it's going to do. Housing sales dropped 16% in March. We haven't seen anything yet. The housing market is going to implode just like it did in 07 and 08 because it was an overbought marketplace. Prices rose too fast, too high, and to an unsustainable level, just as the stock market did during the pandemic. This is all what happens when you throw $6 trillion into the American economy. Forget about the trillions globally.
Right. So let's break that down. If you're 30 years old and you have a 30-year investment horizon, it may not matter in the big picture. But what do you say to people who have a 2, 5, and 10-year investment horizon at this point?
If your time horizon is 2 years, you need to radically alter your allocation. You need to focus on safety first, preservation of capital, and quit trying to get rich quick, which was easy to do over the past 2 decades. Right. That party's over. It's done. And the fact that you've already lost a lot of money over the last 6 months, lick your wounds and prevent yourself from losing even more money over the next 6 months. So if you're a short-term investor, which is anybody under 3 years, you need to be in a safe scenario. If your outlook is 5 or 10 years or beyond, you can take a much different perspective. You can recognize that ultimately this too shall pass. And today we will turn around in the future at 2030. We will look back at 2022 and say, wow, that was a great buying opportunity. So you need to have your head on straight. You need to recognize that investing is about long-term. It's not about short-term speculation or get rich quick, even though that was certainly readily available since this time 2 years ago when we hit the bottom of the pandemic in 2020. But that's an aberration. That's not normal. The stock market's supposed to earn 10% a year, not 2% a day, which is what the NASDAQ did yesterday. So we got to get our heads on straight and get realistic expectations so we don't hurt ourselves. Yep.
Yeah. So when you think about crypto as it relates to this, do you think that we need to bottom out in equities before the correlation ends? Or do you think it basically starts to look like gold, which should be uncorrelated, or at least, should be inversely correlated, if anything, in these times? I mean, or is there some other factor that would cause this correlation to end?
I think we should simply ignore the correlation argument. It's a facade. It's a canard and a facade. It takes our eye off the ball. The real issue in your decision as to whether to invest in crypto and which crypto, because as we know, that's a huge environment and the tiny little word of crypto. Bitcoin and Ethereum are the dominant players. We can just focus there. For you to decide whether to invest in this area, you need to examine the fundamentals, just like you would for investing in any industrial sector or in a specific stock or any piece of real estate that you might choose to invest in. What do I believe is the long-term outlook for this asset class or this specific investment opportunity? And when we examine that, we begin to realize that blockchain and digital assets are still very new, very early, very young, still emerging, developing, growing. And this is the ideal time to engage. And eventually the institutional investors will understand that. Let's remember that institutional investors are never early to the party. They always show up late and they always wreck things. As they've demonstrated with Bitcoin, they didn't get involved in Bitcoin until the last year or so, at the time when Bitcoin was at or near its high. And that's why they engaged, because they finally said to themselves, we can't keep missing this party. They realized that they missed the first 10 years out of denial and arrogance, and they stopped sitting on the sidelines, and they got invested just in time for the global economic environment to implode, forcing them to sell their equities, and they're scarfing up their Bitcoin in that same notion. So don't turn to the institutions as your barometer for whether it's safe to get back in the water. Ignore them. They're going to come along when they finally realize they did it wrong in the first place. They're reevaluating it wrong again, and they're going to finally figure it out later. Don't wait on them. Don't pay attention to them because they're not the measurement by which you need to make judgments.
Yeah, and when you think of the fundamentals, right, for those assets, you mentioned Bitcoin and Ethereum in particular. What excites you as somebody who would make an allocation who, comes from the traditional financial world and probably, not into the ones and zeros of how proof of work or proof of stake works, for example?
Yeah, I have been widely known as a futurist in the financial services industry. The 11 books that I've written are all best-selling and forward-thinking. My last book, The Truth About Your Future from 2017, was all about exponential technologies and how it's changing the world. My new book, The Truth About Crypto, which just came out 2 weeks ago, #1 at Amazon, is all focused on this space. I got engaged in this space. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2012. And so I've been in the space a pretty long time. And I realized very early, and I still remain convinced, that this is a transformational technology. Blockchain and digital assets are going to revolutionize the way commerce is conducted on a global basis in an unprecedented way, just like the internet did back in the 90s. And we all lament that we didn't buy Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft way back in the 90s when we could have, should have, would have. Well, here's the next opportunity, and I don't want to blow this one. I don't want to miss this one because it only comes along once in a generation. So why is it a big deal? It's real simple. It changes the way we move money around the world. The global banking system is the last analog industry on the planet. Everything else has gone digital, from airline miles to the distribution of goods and services. For some dumb reason, we still print money and carry it in our pockets. And it's ridiculous. We don't do that individually. Our paychecks are direct deposited. Our bills are on auto bill pay. We're using credit cards, debit cards, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. We aren't using paper to pay for goods or services any longer, except maybe tips to a bellman or a homeless person to help them out. And it's ridiculous that the Fed is still printing money. And the banking system is horrible. They have limited hours, lousy service, high fees. It's ridiculous. And blockchain and digital assets disrupts all of that, brings it into the 21st century to catch up with everything else. And that's why it's transformative. And that's why Bitcoin as a store of value is so exciting, because it's all about supply and demand. Only 21 million of these things are ever going to be invented or created. 19 million of them already out, been produced, 2 million left. And they're going to be released over the next 120 years on a very slow set schedule, which means there's a fixed supply. There's 300 million people on the planet who have bought Bitcoin so far out of 7 billion potential buyers. So as the adoption grows, the engagement grows, the price has to skyrocket. It's simple supply and demand. That's the case for Bitcoin. Ethereum, I'm even more excited about, because Ethereum has the opportunity for business use in a way that Bitcoin does not, because it's programmable. It's software. You can use it like the way lawyers use contracts. I will give you my money if you do something for me. And this is a valid activity in any industry across the planet. And we're already seeing this adoption everywhere. And it's very, very exciting. By the end of the decade, we will be a fully digital economy. McKinsey says 70% of the global GDP will be digital, and Bitcoin and Ethereum will be leading the way. That's the use case that you need to be focusing on, not the fact that for the past 9 months, Bitcoin and Ethereum are oversold because institutional investors are selling everything in a bear market. That story is short-term, irrelevant to the fundamental, amazing development of the technological innovation that this technology represents.
Awesome. So you answered part of my last question. So it might be a little bit of a repeat, but I love the lawyer analogy for Ethereum, because obviously it's a smart contract system. But if you have a minute with somebody who's like, look, I don't get this crypto shit, right? Which is, probably, even for people who have invested, it's probably 90% of the population, and they're just following the herd. But if you have a minute with somebody who's a little older and is just like, hey, look, I don't get this crypto stuff. Why are people throwing away their money on this garbage? I mean, what's your 1 minute response to those people?
Well, I'll give you two different answers depending on who I'm talking to. My first answer is it's the same thing as baseball cards and artwork. There are people who love this stuff, and the market for that is big and growing rapidly. And that's why people are willing to pay $1 million for a Babe Ruth or an Honest Wagner baseball card. Doesn't have to make any sense. You don't have to understand it. You simply have to recognize you can exploit it. That's one answer. The second answer is to simply recognize that we are living in a technological digital world, and the advances of computer technology make us able to do things faster, cheaper, safer, with greater transparency and inclusion. That's what this is all about. This allows more people to get engaged in the ability to save money, store money, and make money on a global basis than ever before. The United Nations says blockchain tech is the greatest single weapon we have for the elimination of poverty on a global basis.
Yep.
That's why this is a big deal and why you need to pay attention.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. So look, I would love to discuss the future of exponential tech with you for hours. But what I'd love to do, I know you and I are going to be seeing each other in a couple of weeks, and we'll probably get into this as well. But I'd love to have you back and get into this in more detail and actually take a look at the broader markets and see how all this is playing out, because we've got a lot of worried people right now and they need some perspective. If you're under 35, you've never seen anything like this because you've never lived through a recession, right? I mean, that's an amazing thought for those of us who remember the gas lines in the 70s and you know what it was like in the 87, 88 downturn, and again in the 90s downturn. So
here's a statistic most people are not aware of. The Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1979 was the same as it was in 1969.
Wow.
People are not aware of what a long-term and stagflationary environment can be like. And I'm not suggesting we are necessarily going to have a 10-year drought, but you need to recognize these things can happen. And we are in a combination of circumstances right now between lofty prices in the variety of financial markets, stocks, bonds, real estate, the culmination of the incredible trillions that have been thrown into the economy, which devalue currencies on a global basis, fighting the pandemic, which is still with us. Mm-hmm. The uncertainties of the war between Russia and Ukraine that are creating global food shortages that we will begin to see in the fall, and the supply chain shortage that we are already experiencing. These are combining to create the perfect storm. And it's not something that's going to simply go away in a couple of weeks. People need to reset their expectations and recognize the environment that we are in going forward, instead of simply relying on the last 40 years, because this ain't got nothing to do with any of that.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. I completely agree with your outlook. Let's pick this up again in a few weeks and see where we are relative to the hypothesis. Obviously, the bond markets are going to lead the way, but right now it doesn't look good. And we'll see. But anyway, Ric Edelman, you're awesome, and I look forward to spending more time with you. And thank you for giving us some time on a Friday and a holiday weekend.
Well, it's my pleasure, Bill. Looking forward to seeing you. And anybody who wants to spend really a lot of time with you, Bill, Bill will be with us at Vision in Austin, June 8 and 9 at our annual Vision conference. And you'll get a deep dive into the work that Abra is doing and how this can help you in your allocation to crypto. And Bill, I'm looking forward to seeing you there in Austin. Anybody who wants to attend, just visit us, go to dacfp.com and get all the info.
Absolutely. And I think you're Ric Edelman on Twitter as well. I think anyway, pretty easy to find, I think. And again, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure.
All right, man. Thank you. All right. So look, the Abra team is going to be here to answer everything, CPRX, what's happening with the Abra app, the listing issues and whatnot. And so we'll get into it in a few minutes. I know a lot of you have burning questions on the live chats. Obviously with markets going down and sideways, there's always one sure way to grow your holdings. And that's if you're holding cash in Abra Earn, you can earn compounding interest just for storing it in Abra. Here's how. All right. So a couple of things. I'm going to have some folks from the Abra team join me in a moment here. I just want to talk about some ground rules and how we're going to do this. We're happy to spend all the time that you want answering questions. We'll get into everything happening with CPERCs. I understand that there was a Bittrex announcement on the potentially delisting CPERCs. I know the Crypto Banking Alliance has reached out for clarity on that. I don't have a lot to say because I don't control those listings. And I do know that I'm going to get I can tell you for sure, since I'm doing it, I'm going to get personally more involved in the listing discussions with the other exchanges that the Crypto Banking Alliance has been having. And I'll try to be as forthcoming as I can. Sometimes we have to sign NDAs with the exchanges, or the CBA does, and in order to get those listings done. And so I'll tell you as much as I can, as often as I can, but I am extremely confident that there will be a couple of other listings this year, and based upon those discussions. And I don't have more to say on what Bittrex is doing. We can speculate on why. We have been given no specific feedback as to why the spreads and the volumes have actually been pretty decent on Bittrex. So that really can't be the reason. Anyway, we're going to dig in with them and hopefully get a response. We haven't so far. We are. Let me just also answer this up front. We are 100% fully committed to CPERCs and Abra Earn. We have clearly, and this is on me, that's fine. We've clearly made mistakes in how we've launched the program and how it's been handled. The initial airdrops here are effectively free money, and we were excited to do that. I can already give you a list of things that I would do differently if we were launching this today as opposed to last November, based upon how this was done. And that's fine. I'm happy to go into that. I think what we should also do is, since we've got 20 minutes now, is we should do a separate show just dedicated to having a back and forth dialogue on CPERCs and your ideas as well. And I'll share you some of my ideas of what I would like to see happen. No guarantee that this is, I'm not a dictator. I don't tell the Abra team what to do. And we can have a dialogue about what we might do with certain CPERCs things we're thinking about. But I can tell you this, we are working on, let's call it a 2.0 program for CPERCs. And we will, be dedicating a huge amount of internal resource to this. It is going to take some time. And I'm fully committed to taking years if it takes to get this right. And that means, if that means iterating once, twice, thrice, it's all good, right? To me, I've put a lot of personal money in CPERCs. I'm not selling. I have no interest in selling. It's a long-term perspective for me. Let me also say this: if you're speculating on days and weeks at a time on new alternative cryptocurrencies, you're going to lose money. Okay, I've told you all this 100 times. Okay, if you have a long-term perspective on potential utility, right, like we talked about in the white paper, and for Abra Perks, like Crypto Banking Alliance has talked about in their white paper for CPERCs, you have it's speculative, it's risky, but there's a chance that you could come out way ahead. Okay, but you should be allocating accordingly. Please don't day trade these super speculative altcoins, except with money you're willing to lose. All right, and so CPERCs was not created to give you a new speculative vehicle to throw away money. All right, it was created as a reward system that would have utility for many different services. It was adopted by Abra Perks as a utility. Okay. All right. So let me bring into and one other thing before I bring them in. Okay. I'm going to set a couple of other ground rules. I don't mind frustration on the live chat. It's totally fine. And to a large degree, I get it, right? It's frustrating all around. Obviously I want the price for everything to go up and to the right perpetually and forever. That's not realistic. Okay. But that having been said, I'm totally fine to sit here and talk about things and absorb the frustration that some of you feel on how, where we are with CPERX and Abra Earn. No problem with that. However, what I'm not going to accept is, any kind of personal attacks on anyone on the Abra team. They're here with their time. They don't need to be doing this. They're gracious enough to give us their time. And so we're going to keep it civil, or you're going to be blocked. We don't mind hard questions. But any kind of attacks, any other nonsense about scams, and you're just going to be blocked. And so if you have civil, reasonable questions, I'm willing to stay even longer than 10 to get to them. I don't know. I can't speak for the others. Okay. With that, thank you for your patience. We're going to bring on Cole and Priya into Money Talks. Morning, gang. How you all doing?
Hi, good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for doing this. Cole Dunbar leads product marketing. Priya Chawla, who you've all seen on Money Talks before, is actually, you've seen Cole as well, is director of product and is, among other things, responsible for Abra Earn. Abra Perks, which includes our use of CPERX. And so we've got a lot of questions here today. So let's just get into some of them. I don't know if you want to. Let me just address this burning Bittrex question, because I think I'm going to have to take that one. As I mentioned earlier, yes, there is a posting on the Bittrex website. We were given no warning, advance warning of this. We have no, issue. We have no specific feedback from them. Nothing at all about why they might delist this. I've reached out. The Crypto Banking Alliance folks have reached out. The folks in the listing team have told me they don't even know what's going on, to be honest. So I'm trying to get direct feedback. Anyway, so as I said, I'm fully confident in the future of CPERX, and I'm fully committed to it. Bittrex is one exchange of hundreds. And so we're going to get this thing listed. I'm going to take a more active role in the listings. Okay, so with that having been said, I would love to hear your all perspective on kind of the future of CPERX, what you would like to see happen, your perspective on where we are now and how people should be thinking about this. So I don't know, Priya, feel free to start. Cole, jump in.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. So before I go into the future, I want to kind of just recap what I think was 1.0, right? We call it the 1.0 or the early year of the Perks program, right? If you look back at it, it was a very user-friendly incentive framework, right? With generous promotions and kind of rewards tied to our core activities, right? And the goal is to provide like a virtual circle of value to all users, right? Build the right incentive framework so we can have this virtuous cycle set up. So we've seen hodling behavior from higher tiers. We've seen a tremendous increase in activity on the app, leading to users earning more rewards. So the next logical step for us is to, as early adopters of CPERX, right, it is to build features in the product to bolster essentially long-term usability of CPERX, right? And that's how I see Abra Perks transitioning into in its future, right? We have to build use for the token with our new products and services that Abra is going to come out in later part of the year. We're looking into how we can give access to newer products to users who are, who have a commitment and believe in CPERX. There's going to be new features coming out related to discounts on trading fees. A lot of work has to happen to kind of make that work, which is what me and my team is super focused on for the next coming months.
Yep. Okay. And I don't know, Cole, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just to add on to what Priya was saying, even though we've scaled back the rewards for the everyday activities for trading, earning, and borrowing, we're still keeping the loyalty tiers. And while we have a bit of a brief hiatus right now, as our product and engineering teams build out this additional CPERX utility within the Abra ecosystem, more and more ways to earn rewards and ways to use your CPERX are going to be added to the Abra app and the Abra ecosystem.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's right. So a few things, we're getting some questions here. I'll try to address a couple of these as well. There's no regulatory issues at all regarding CPRX that I'm aware of. Again, we don't own CPRX. We didn't create it. It was created by an AG in Switzerland. We have no ownership in it. We have no regulatory oversight or compliance oversight of it. They, they're doing their thing, and we're simply a grantee. I can tell you, we'll probably end up getting an additional grant in the future, just based upon some partnerships and some products. We've got a couple of really interesting, huge announcements, actually, that we're going to be making at Consensus, which I can't get into now because one of them involves a public company, so I can't do any product features on that. But it's going to, take advantage of CPRX eventually, and that's probably going to involve an additional grant. But to answer another question as well, we have not utilized the entire initial tranche. And so we're within our rights to buy back on the open market anytime we want. I wouldn't be surprised if we do that, given these prices, and we think it's way undervalued, but that's just our opinion. We can do whatever we want with our balance sheets as a company, and so we may buy some back. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. So in terms of how trading would eventually be turned on, we're working on that. We have a couple of different solutions that the engineering team is exploring. We may use external DEX for trading. We may use our over-the-counter desk for trading on the back end. We're working. We actually do have a couple of other sources. There are other exchanges, by the way, besides Bittrex, where CPRX is listed. And not all of them have a lot of liquidity in their trading systems. They're smaller, but we can actually use them to process buys and sells quite simply. So anyway, so the bottom line is that there are many solutions to this that do not require Bittrex. Bittrex is, just, as I said, one relatively small exchange. We've had a good partnership with them over the years. So like I said, we are surprised by this, but it is, it's not on Abra to force Bittrex to do anything. It's on Bittrex to decide. So one other question that's come up is about tiers. So I've done the math, like 95% of CPRX Plus held in Abra was actually distributed for free as part of rewards, meaning they didn't buy anything. They were simply giving the CPRX, and they held it. Still, the vast majority of CPRX is being staked in Abra for the CPRX rewards, which is not being turned off at all. So you're going to continue to get those 3%, as I understand it. A few people actually bought CPRX in order to get a specific loyalty tier. Can you talk to like the current thinking on that and what we might or might not do there?
Yeah. So essentially, as we reevaluate our kind of our framework, like I said, we've seen, buying behavior, especially from higher tiers, or people trying to go to, tiers like Orbit and so on. So we're really digging deep into our user data and kind of trying to understand the behavior so we can rightly incentivize those users as we transition to the new framework. So we're going to look at, what users are and potential ways of how we can migrate them or how we can move them to a 2.0 framework once we are ready with it. So, once we have those details, we'll obviously come back to all those users. I guess that's all I can say for now. But we are gonna, we're gonna make sure we have a way for users who are committed to it to be placed rightly in the new incentive framework.
Yep. So look, I mean, no commitment, of course, and I'm not going to force anything, but we have a lot of ongoing discussions as to how this is going to work. And I think, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the CBA stepped in with an additional grant, and we're starting to have those discussions because they're really excited under NDA on some of the stuff that we're working on, that we're going to be announcing at Consensus and launching this year. But I would not be surprised if there was eventually another airdrop, here for, focusing on people with, kind of more consistent usage and deposits in Abra Earn. So, it's premature to say what we are or aren't going to do, except to say I think everything is on the table in terms of trading rewards and earned rewards, and eventually even who knows, maybe we'll be in the NFT space soon and there'll be NFT rewards. We'll see. So I think one of you kind of talked about this a little bit, but one of the biggest, I think, opportunities here is to create more opportunities for utilizing CPERCs both inside and outside of the Abra environment. And obviously we control the Abra environment. We don't control other apps. But what's your take on the best opportunities for giving people utility for CPERCs inside of Abra?
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, I can take that. So one of the things we've been working on is advanced order types, price protection for market orders, limit orders, to give users more tools to control their crypto portfolio and make their lives easier. And as a fast follow to limit orders, we plan to let users pay the small limit order fees and CPERCs for some amount of discount. We're still working on scoping out that feature, but we think that's going to be one good way that users can benefit from their crypto perks, make their trading easier, and help support the crypto perks ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've got a really good, I just saw a really interesting comment, which I totally agree with. People should be able to send comments, proposals, suggestions for CPERCs. I don't even know if I actually don't know the answer to this offhand. I wonder what a good way for us to collect those would be. Let's see. I'm thinking about that. If you have an immediate suggestion, throw it out. But we should definitely, support might not be the best place for that. You can certainly do that. It'll get to us, but it would be great if we had an easier way. Let me check with the team offline while we're talking here and see if we have a CPERCs alias that we can use, or an Abra Perks alias we could use. But we definitely want you to be able to send us thoughts and suggestions directly. And do send them to support in the meantime if you're not sure, as opposed to not sending anything. But maybe we can set up an Abra Perks, CPERCs alias specifically to take comments, suggestions, questions on that, which would be great. So let me back channel with the team while we're doing this. Let's see, what else do we have here? So a lot of people asking if we could explain, actually, because they didn't see the emails, if we could explain what we're actually doing with what we're calling 1.0 and what's going to happen in the meantime, and then what's coming next. So maybe we should rewind and just kind of explain what we're going to do and why, and then what's coming next. So Priya, why don't you start with that?
Okay. So the Abra Perks program, as it stands today, with its existing loyalty structures, on end of May 31st, what's going to happen is the systematic rewards, which means rewards that you just get for doing any trade, earn, and borrow activity on the app, are going to be paused, which means up until 31st, you're still accruing rewards. And we're going to pay out all those rewards starting next week at a fixed price of 2 cents. Right. So that's where, there's going to be a pause, and pause essentially means these core activities and the rewards tied to them are no longer going to be given out. But we'll still have some specific time-bound promotions that the marketing team is going to run related to funding your account or other specific time-bound activities that you can do inside of the app between and June 1 and up until we can launch the next revised version of our rewards. So you'll have your existing loyalty tiers. In the meanwhile, they'll still stay. Like Cole mentioned earlier, the loyalty tiers are going to stay. Yep. Once we are ready with the new framework, we will come out with how that's going to work, and if there are any adjustments to the tiers and how users can respond to it, and new product features that will involve using CPERCs, all of that is going to come around in later part of the year. So that's essentially what the pause really means.
Yeah.
One note on the pause for rewards related to funding your account. If you're trying to get the reward for first funding your account or trying to make a referral, that May 31st, June 1st deadline is just for the point where you fund your account. So let's say I made a referral and my friend funds their account on May 31st at noon. That's still within the window. So if they hold their funds for the holding period, then both of us will still earn the referral reward. So people who are in the middle of their holding window aren't going to lose the rewards they've been promised.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right. So a couple of things. So really good suggestion here. Well, I don't know if it's a really good suggestion. It seems like a good suggestion to me. Maybe you could comment. Somebody had suggested that we use the Reddit, the subreddit for Abra that we have there, to potentially set up some group discussions on ideas for CPERCs and creating more active dialogue. I think it's a great idea. I'd be happy to participate on occasion. I don't know if we can take it offline if you all like, but if you have a thought now, either as a response to that or even a better solution, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into Reddit and potentially an email alias. I do want to call out that we actually did do a survey of CPERCs a month or two back to a subset of users. So we got really good suggestions.
Okay.
And some of those suggestions are kind of incorporated into what we just discussed, where the future roadmap of CPERC. So that, we already did one, and that was great to get some, all feedback from our users.
Yeah. Okay. So, by the way, I guess people may be joining late or didn't hear my comments earlier. I am going to be taking a more active role in the CPERCs listing discussions with the exchanges. Since we don't own CPERCs, it's owned by the Crypto Banking Alliance. They were managing the process. I've asked them if I can step in and get more involved, since I obviously have a lot of contacts and peers working at different exchanges. And so I am going to be taking a more active role in the listing process with other exchanges. I've already started, actually, and I'm having active discussions with a few exchanges. Now, I don't know if we have a lot of Digibyte fans here. When we first were working to get Digibyte listed in Abra, there was an army of people that were basically following me like glue on paper across the interwebs, basically responding to every breath I took with "please list Digibyte." And we may ask you to do something similar with these exchanges to let them know that we have an army of people here who are highly motivated and want to support CPERCs and see it listed all over the place. So please feel free to go, respond to posts from Binance and Coinbase and even Bittrex to keep them from delisting, to OKX and Huobi. If you use any of these exchanges, please tell them to list CPRX on their exchange. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so I think if we see a lot of that from the CPERCs army, let's call it, and see it out there, I do think that there's a good chance that they'll eventually acquiesce and push the listing. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to just look and see if we've addressed a lot of these. Some people are asking if we're going to change the loyalty tiers. It is possible, but the decision has not been made specifically yet on changing the tiers. I don't know, Priya, if there's anything else to add there at this point.
I think it's still under consideration. We are looking at our plan, and our rates and our tiers have been it's been quite a user-friendly, generous framework. Even if you look at our competitors, our rates have been that we've offered on CPERCs have been quite high. So we're looking at everything as much as we can to kind of figure out a long-lasting kind of sustainable framework. That's the goal with the next version, is to build that sustainability into the program.
Yep. And let me just build on that, because I think the sustainability is the key point here. We want to have a system that survives for years and really adds value to your lives in terms of how it's being used, whether it's for trading or future NFT products or future payment products, whatever, right? And so It's not just, hey, get a grant, give out the C perks, then it dies. I'm not interested in that. I want a long-term, really cool, useful ecosystem within Abra based upon C perks that we all take advantage of in our daily lives as Abra moves more and more in the direction of crypto banking. And we're fully committed to that. And, please keep the comments coming. This is clearly reverted online here into a more constructive dialogue. And I think we should have more of these now. But as I said, the best thing you can do to help right now is to basically go follow every single exchange out there and respond to every single post and ask them to list C perks, and do it in a civil way, please, because I don't want to be responsible for World War III on Twitter. But, we listened on Digibyte and other cryptocurrencies that a lot of you support, and I'm sure they'll listen as well. And in the meantime, I'm going to push very hard in the discussions I'm involved in to make sure that C perks gets listed. Let's see. So look, I don't have specifics for you, and the team doesn't have specifics for you on how a lot of these rewards are going to change, how a lot of bonuses are going to be paid out. I think we'll listen. We'll continue to listen. I've seen some of the early potential plans. There's a lot in there that I'm excited about. We have a lot more work to do. Let's follow up and see if we can also get more of a dialogue going either on Reddit or other places. I do think, talking to the team in the background here, if you do send a note to support@abra.com with CPerks feedback or CPerks ideas in the subject, it will get routed to the product team that is responsible for this. I can assure you of that. But I do think the Reddit idea is a good one as well. So we'll follow up on that and see what we can do there. Let's see. Let me see if we've got anything. I'm going to scroll back here. There's a lot of repeat questions here, so I'm trying not to repeat the same questions. And I'm getting a few questions on Luna 2.0. We don't know yet what's happening, and it's not clear how that's going to work. And so it's unclear if we're going to be able to make Luna 2.0 distributions. I don't know yet. Again, those of you, I so many questions about the CPerks price. Look, I have no. I shouldn't say I have no opinion. My opinion on the CPerks price in the short term is I don't focus on the CPerks price in the short term. I focus on the utility and I focus on the long-term prospects for Abra as one of the fastest growing companies in the crypto space. And I know that because I'm driving a lot of this, that we're fully committed to this. And so I have a very long-term perspective on this. A lot of what happens in the altcoin world and crypto is also a function of the broader markets. And so obviously, even if the utility was through the roof, right now, everything is down in crypto. So you need to understand and have a longer term perspective. And if you're going to trade on a short term basis in a lot of new altcoins, you're going to be very disappointed. And that has nothing to do with the utility issue. That's simply a function of what happens with altcoin markets in the very short term. Okay, so we are, in light of, I should also mention, just to be extremely clear, in light of Bittrex and the delisting, we're currently evaluating the trading plans for CPerks. As soon as we have more clarity on what's going on there and how we can manage the liquidity, we'll have more to say on the trading. This caught us by surprise, just like it caught you. So we're still working both with them and internally to figure that out. Okay, so hopefully, let's see. Let me see. I don't see any other questions right now that we haven't already answered. So let's do this. Let's take some discussions over to Reddit, and we'll have a discussion internally how to do that. And I like the idea of upvoting ideas and having a more proactive dialogue about ideas and what we might do here with CPerks. I think we should do more, a couple of other dedicated shows regarding CPerks. And yeah, so I can only continue to promise you that I'm right now fully committed to Abra Perks and using CPerks within Abra Perks. I do see some support questions here that are specific to specific users. We have live support in the Abra app. Hopefully you're all aware of that. It's really easy to find. And so, yeah, they'll answer your questions real time 24/7. And so please continue to use that. We've really staffed up the support team. Yeah, so you are all, I promise you're all going to hear a lot about Abra Perks and CPerks in the coming weeks. Thanks for your patience as we figure this out together. And like I said, I'm happy to do a couple of more shows on this in the coming weeks. Do some AMAs just on CPerks and have a more active dialogue. Maybe we can integrate it into Reddit and do like a live video stream at the same time. So in the meantime, thanks, Cole and Priya. I really appreciate you're doing this. And those of you who online, thanks for keeping it civil. And I'm sure that we'll get through all this together and get CPerks to where we want it to be. So thank you both for that. Appreciate it. And have a great Memorial Day weekend, those of you in the US, and enjoy the time with your family. And we will see you next week on Money Talks.